want to welcome to the stage Jim Fanning, Vice President, Financial Services here at Databricks.
All right. Wow. I love seeing this packed room. Thanks, everyone, for coming. My name is Jim Fanning. I lead the financial services sector for Databricks on the sales side. I'm super excited with the agenda that we have today, and I want to thank all of you for coming. I would be remiss if I didn't also thank our partners. And today we have two sponsoring partners for this industry summit. Amazon Web Services, AWS, and Deloitte. So could we have a quick round of applause for our sponsoring partners? All right, I like to say that financial services is the most important industry to Databricks, and yes, all right, nods of approval. Look, you're gonna hear about use cases across banking, payments, capital markets, insurance, right? We wanna make sure that there's something for everyone in the room. And again, it's one thing for us to tell the story. It's quite a different thing to hear it directly from our customers. So I'm really grateful for the customers that we have presenting today on their solutions and how they're getting business value for Databricks. So with that, I would like to welcome to the stage our leader of go-to-market for financial services, Mr. Junta Nakai.
The voice, the text here is not very good, huh? My name is Johnson Nakai. No, I'm kidding. Stop. Oh, I need the clicker. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I think this is the largest industry forum at DAIS. So financial services is the most important vertical for us. It's actually the biggest vertical at Databricks as well. So thanks for all your partnership and support. I'm super excited to be here. And I'm going to keep it pretty brief because we have a long list of speakers and you'd much rather hear from them than me. So I want to talk about what's happening in the industry. And I want to talk about surviving and thriving in the era of generative AI, right? It's everywhere. People are excited. You know, I think that's one of the reasons, hopefully, you're at DAIS as well. Well, the punchline is very simple, right? Which is the pace of change is accelerating. Okay, I think all of us would agree with that, right? I think the battle for survival is also intensifying. Right? Just because you're a successful asset manager or a successful bank in the past, I think it's hard to say you're going to be successful 3 to 5 years from now because things are going to change massively. Okay, and there's a lot of incumbents here in the room, and there's a lot of fintechs here in the room. And this is a slide I put together a couple of weeks ago, and I was just curious. I was like, I wonder how many fintechs there are in the world. Okay, anyone want to guess how many fintechs there are in the world? 7. You're right. No, I'm just kidding. No, there's more than 7, okay? So according to what I could find, there's about 30,000 fintechs in the world, okay? Of which 314 are unicorns. So fintechs are about a quarter of all unicorns from the data that I could find. But the really interesting part here is that the number of unicorns has grown 62% in the last 2 years, okay? In spite of the funding challenges, in spite of interest rates and headwinds and economic headwinds, I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. And quite frankly, they're trying to eat your lunch, okay? They're trying to take the juiciest parts of the financial service industry. So that means there's a lot of opportunities for both fintechs and incumbents. There's also a lot of challenges, okay? And where we believe Databricks fits in is that we help customers go on what we call this data and AI maturity curve. And I think you'll see this over and over again. A lot of great announcements coming tomorrow. But the first step of that is modernization. Okay, it's just about, hey, do we have data in the cloud? Can we govern that data, right? Can we migrate that stuff? That's kind of the foundation, right? The second part, which I think you'll hear a lot about at the keynotes tomorrow, is around democratization, right? Can we bring data and analytics to the masses within the company in a secured and governed way? It's really important. And that ultimately leads to transformation of your company, right? You can't get to the transformation without doing the democratization and modernization. And what's happened in, let's say, since November of 2022, which is when ChatGPT came about, every CEO, every executive that we talked to is like, we're now an AI company, and more specific, we're a Gen AI company. And it's wonderful, right? But it's actually opened up the conversation to, hey, how are we going to actually enable that? What are the decisions that we have to make more upstream in order to make that happen? And that's about democratization and modernization. A lot of what you'll hear about tomorrow at the keynotes. Hopefully a lot what you hear from customers today is about how they've gone on that journey to drive that ultimate transformation, okay? So, does anyone not know who this is, by the way? Okay, this is the Hamburglar. Because I was out with one of my colleagues who's much younger than me. She's like, what is that? I was like, you don't know the Hamburglar? Okay. Hamburglar was, I think in like the 80s and 90s, was a character who stole hamburgers from like McDonald's commercials. Anyway, so let's imagine I'm an insurance company. And he is one of my customers. You know, a little suspicious, this guy. He's always eating hamburgers. Very important fact, okay? Just remember, he's always eating hamburgers. He's okay. So he's like, hey, I got in a car accident. I need a new car. So he files a claim. He submits this picture. And I'm the insurance company. I'm like, okay. Well, it looks like a legit accident. You know, a Hamburglar, customer of mine. All right, maybe we should start processing this claim because it looks like there's a lot of damage to his car. Okay? This image is fake. So I created this on Stable Diffusion in about 30 seconds. And the reason I did that is I was talking to one of our insurance customers a few weeks ago, and they said, hey, we have this problem where people are Gen AI creating images of car accidents and trying to submit that as claims. Okay? So this is a real thing that's happening. Actually, not only in financial, this is apparently happening like food delivery, right? So you order something from Uber Eats, you know, and you're like, oh, my pizza's bad. So you create like a fake image of a pizza. I'm like, someone ate half my pizza, give me my money back, right? So this is proliferating, actually, because one of the first use cases of AI, or Gen AI, unfortunately, is fraud, right? So actually, this looks pretty real, right? It's pretty good. So I put in, you know, car accident, night, whatever. The only thing is, I showed this to my friend, and he's like, did you get into a car accident in 1995? Like, look at those cars. They look pretty old. So I was like, okay, so this is a really interesting image. So I put it into a private model, right? You know, the ChatGPTs of the world. And I put it in, and I said, hey, is this a fake picture or not? Okay, and this is what it told me. It said, hey, nothing immediately suggests that this photograph is forged, okay? And of course, I'm sure you could prompt it and ask it other smart questions, but the point here is if you're thinking about what the most important asset for your institution is for the future, I think it's going to be data and people, okay? So relying on a third party for a model, for insights, is probably going to become more and more difficult going forward because if you're an insurance company, you're going to have more information about auto accidents than anyone else. So if you could train on your own data, build your own models, that's the source of competitive advantage for you, right? This is, I think, the power of what Databricks is trying to do, especially in the area of Gen AI, is to let everybody be like OpenAI, right? Like you shouldn't have to rely on a third party to build arguably the most important asset you're going to have in the future, which is your data in your AI and your asset and your people, and bringing all that things together. So what does that actually mean? So if I'm an executive, you'll hear a lot about Gen AI, I think, tomorrow, and dashboarding tomorrow as well. But if that means, Databricks is a platform for all personas at an insurance company, right? It's become critically sort of important in the workflow of capital markets, banking, all these different sectors. So what that means is if I'm an executive, I come in, I see the dashboard, and I see all my loss ratios, and I see all the severities and all this stuff. But increasingly, there's natural language capabilities, right? So let's say you want to ask this question. What are ways I can improve my combined ratio? Wouldn't it be wonderful if your BI dashboard could tell you that answer? Okay, I think you'll hear more about that tomorrow. Okay, now imagine if you're now an ML engineer at the same company. So the ML engineer at the same company, instead of relying on a third party, you might want to build your own models. Okay, so if you looked at that picture very carefully, there was no skid marks. So maybe you want to train your models to look for skid marks. Okay. And especially because you know the exact customer who was driving that car, maybe there'll be hamburgers all over the place, okay, if he was actually in that accident. So this is just the power of training your own models on your own data that's going to alleviate the ability to detect fraud. Let's imagine if you're a claims adjuster, okay? It's become a critical part of your workflow to look at all the different suspicious claims and really, identify, reduce the number of false positives and let you hone in on your job to do your job better. This is kind of the power of what I showed before, which is democratization. When you can democratize data and AI across your organization, there's tremendous benefits to be had. okay? And in financial services, if you read reports from McKinsey and EY and PwC and all these different people, the average productivity gain is thought to be maybe 30 to 90% in financial services if Gen AI is part of your workflow going forward, okay? Do you guys know what the average comp ratio on Wall Street is? Which is the single biggest line item for almost every single bank, is people, okay? The average comp ratio on Wall Street is 35%. Single biggest line item is people cost. Imagine what you could do to your company, to your share price, if all those people can be 30 to 90% more productive. That's the power of democratization in financial services. So what does Databricks enable you to do? Okay, and this is what I hope it will come through in the talks and in the keynotes tomorrow, is that if you think about all of your organizations, data and AI lives in a very small percent of your organization, right? And what Databricks enables you to do, hopefully, is going back to that, democratization transformation, is to enable access to these kind of insights, the power of AI, to a much, much broader array of folks within your organization. That's how you become a data and AI-driven financial service institution. That's how you're going to improve your combined ratio. That's how you're going to improve your efficiency ratios, all the things that your CEO and CFO cares about when you're running your bank or insurance company or capital markets firm. So this is my last slide, which is what Databricks, if you kind of agree with me that, the pace of change is accelerating, if you agree with me that the battle for survival is going to intensify over the next few years, I think winning is going to require data and AI everywhere in your organization, okay? And I think that's the power of Databricks that in the data intelligence platform that we provide, okay? So this is a super short talk. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my friends and partners at S&P Global.
Joining Junta, David Coluccio from S&P.
Thanks, Junta. Perfect. I had no idea I was going on after the Hamburglar, so these slides are going to be completely boring. So I do apologize in advance. Hi, everybody. My name is David Coluccio. I am the Managing Director and Head of Distribution Solutions at S&P Global Market Intelligence. And so, in essence, my team and I are responsible for taking all the data that we have at S&P Global. And as you can see, we have a lot of data from S&P Global Ratings and Credit Analytics to our iconic indices that SP Dow Jones Index provides, our Commodity Insights data set, which provides unique data and analytics around the energy and commodity markets, mobility data sets, which provides unique data, industry-specific data on the automotive sector, and the Market Intelligence division, which is the division that I'm part of, which provides unique data and insights across many different data sets, whether it's macroeconomic data, supply chain data, deep company information, both private and public company, fundamentals, estimates, ownership, textual data. So we've delivered textual data in a machine-readable format to feed your AI models. And of course, equity, fixed income pricing. So our goal is to take all that data, make sure that it's linked to a unique identifier, and then be able to structure it consistently so our clients could commingle the data sets together, and then deliver it to our clients how they want to use it, whether it's FTP feed, API, and more, we're hearing our clients utilize the cloud. So that's a brief overview of S&P Global. Now, we've had the pleasure to collaborate with Databricks for many years now. And we worked together to address a client challenge that we had a few years ago, which was really around streamlining our trial process, right? Our clients wanted access to the data right away. And so we worked together with Databricks, and we built a tool called the S&P Global Capital IQ Workbench tool. And so this is built on top of Databricks. It's a cloud-hosted notebook environment that allows our clients to instantly gain access to all our content within S&P Global Market Intelligence. And on top of that, what we did was we built starter notebooks, right? So these are notebooks with all the code and visualization to really help jumpstart the analysis for our clients. And it truly has been a game changer for us when it comes to clients trialing our data sets. It's been so successful that our quantamental research team which delivers a ton of amazing research and white papers, they utilize Workbench today to perform all their research and their back testing. And the value add for that is that all that code and data is there in Workbench, in Databricks. And so what we've done is we've built research notebooks so that as the clients are reading those white papers, they can now jump into Workbench and actually replicate those white papers and be able to replicate the white papers and see the value of the data. So it's been hugely successful. If you fast forward to today, clients are dealing with a completely different challenge, right? Data is getting bigger and bigger. More and more clients are utilizing AI in the cloud platforms of their choice. And clients are asking us, we no longer want to manage loading data from an FTP site on-prem into the cloud platforms that we want to utilize. We want you guys to manage that process. And the cloud platform that we continue to hear from clients is Databricks. And so we're happy to announce that S&P Global, many of the S&P Global Commodity Insight products today are available through Databricks Delta Share. We're able to now, yes. We're able to now seamlessly take that data and deliver it directly into our client's Databricks environment. And we're working very closely with Databricks to be able to deliver many of our market intelligence data sets as well through Delta Share directly into our client's Databricks environment very soon. So with that, I want to thank Databricks for the amazing collaboration over the years, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate with Databricks to build frictionless solutions for our clients to access our data in order for them to provide, in order for us to provide differentiated solutions to help them with their investment and business decisions. So with that, I want to thank you all for the time, and I'm going to pass it over to Jade.
Jason Mirsky, Head of Data Solutions at JP Morgan. Also, if you do have an open seat next to you, if you could just raise your hand so we can get more folks in here if possible. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody. My name is Jason Mirsky. Let's see. There we go. And I work for a small startup called JP Morgan. Actually, we are a startup. We are the fusion business. We do data solutions inside of security services. And so this is a new business for us. And what that means is that we're have all the things of a startup. We are working hard, working all hours, using modern technology, trying to deliver for our clients. And because it's JP Morgan, I have to tell you that anything I say today will not be construed as investment advice. Any opinions expressed are my own, so on and so forth. So, you know, a lot of people are going to talk to you about exciting things about AI and generative AI and transformer models. What we do in security services is a bore. We do custody, accounting, and middle office, and the bores are CBOR, ABOR, and IBOR. Those are your official books of record. So in custody, years ago when people used to ride those bicycles with the big front wheel, we would actually store the stock certificates for people, and we officially held the assets. That's all digital now. But the exhaust of us being a custodian is that we are the official source of your positions and transactions. And then our clients, institutional investors, asset owners, asset managers, they often want to know, how much are those investments worth? And so that's where our accounting comes in, and we give a valuation. So that's the net asset value. We'll give the valuation of your funds, of your positions, transactions. And then sometimes our clients say, well, actually, I just made a trade intraday. What's my portfolio look like now? And that's the investment book of record. It's the real-time flow of what your book is. And so there's a lot of data exhaust from these businesses, and we do a bunch of other stuff in security services, but our clients also need a whole lot of other data. Right, so they need benchmarks, they need the S&P data, obviously. They need reference data, ESG data. God forbid, they might have a third-party custodian, they might have a third-party fund administrator, they need pricing data. So there's tons and tons of data that our clients need. And so we started this business fusion to collect all of the exhaustive security services, the positions, the transactions, the open tax slots, combine it with third-party data, and then deliver it to where our clients want. And where do our clients want it? Often it's Databricks for AI and analysis afterwards. So what did we hear from our clients? Well, our clients are starting to invest in private assets, right? So private assets are a really difficult area in that the data often just doesn't exist outside of an unstructured PDF. And so there are services out there that are gathering the data from those PDFs. It's a really difficult space. Our clients are also starting to invest in ESG strategies, hugely fragmented market. There are big players in it like MSCI, ISS, Sustainalytics, S&P. And so you have lots and lots of data that's in all different formats, which means that our clients are seeing rising tech and operations costs. At the same time, they're facing pricing pressures, and so there's margin compression. And then lastly, our clients want to be ready for AI. They're not exactly sure what that means, but we're here to help. So we spoke to our clients just to find out where are they on their data journey. And on the far left of this chart, you can see some of our clients have data in all different sorts of places, in different formats, in different databases, in file systems, in email, everywhere you can think of. Some clients cheekily call that a federated strategy. So one of the first things that clients do to fix that is they start to create data sets. And once you have data sets, you want to provide a point of access for those data sets. So you might create a single point of access, maybe it's an API. Maybe you have a catalog so you can make it discoverable. And then you start thinking, well, after we get the data out of this infrastructure, my users still need to do a whole lot of work on that data. And so can I normalize the data upon entry into my data infrastructure, a process called shift left. And then finally, the last step is data integration, where clients start to think about, can I model the actual relationships that exist within the data inside my data architecture? So let's take a look at this, not from the client as a whole, but from the point of view of an AI ML data scientist at one of our clients. So this is sort of the workflow that they go through. Step one, they need to define the problem they're going to work on. They may have KPIs that they define at the same time, what success look like. They then need to go and provision an environment that they're going to work in. That may be a Databricks environment. Then they have to do data discovery. They need to figure out what data do we have in-house that could be used for this AI problem that I'm working on. Once they discover the data that they want, they then need to request access, another process that could take days, weeks. Once they get access to the data, they start data cleaning. They'll make some corrections. They might correct for inconsistencies, remove irrelevant information. Then they'll do exploratory analysis, right? So they'll graph the data. Maybe they run a regression. They'll look for outliers. And then they'll do something called feature engineering, where they try and get the data to express what they want the AI to work on. So we've just gone through a list of things, 7 items here. Before we got to any of the fun stuff of model selection, model evaluation, tuning, approval and deployment, and then updating. So it's often said that a data scientist spends 80% of their time on data wrangling, and then they spend 20% of their time complaining about data wrangling. So it leaves you no time to do any of the cool stuff. So some of our clients said, well, can't I just throw it all in the cloud? Sure, you can, but it doesn't improve your discoverability. It doesn't address data entitlements. It doesn't mean that all your vendors are going to put it there. And most importantly, when you have data coming from multiple places, you're going to have inconsistent data definitions and inconsistent identifiers. So what you really need is a semantic layer. A semantic layer is the business representation of your data. And it'll give you a view across all of your data, but building a semantic layer is super hard because you need domain expertise. You need people who are familiar with the data but also familiar with the business use cases. And so I've got an example here. It's kind of like a data dictionary example where your fund accountant might call something a position valuation. Your risk system calls it present value. Your IBOR calls it value. In the semantic layer, that all might map into a single thing called valuation, right? And so we've played around with, when we're creating our semantic layer, using some LLMs just to provide consistency in how we name everything, right? So the other thing the semantic layer does is you might describe all the relationships within the data there. And so here is what we've built. It's the Fusion ecosystem. You can see all of the data on the far left, and it goes into our architecture as source data, and it's available via what we've built, the Fusion data mesh. And the data mesh can deliver data via REST APIs. So we've built a Java SDK, a Python SDK. It can deliver the data to your Databricks environment. It can allow you to do data visualization. We can deliver to third-party analytics providers. So we deliver to FactSet in the format that they need for performance and performance attribution. We deliver to MSCI in the format they need for risk analytics. We also deliver it into data science platforms. And the thing that we've done on the data mesh is obviously we built a catalog, so everything is very easily discoverable. We've also built a notification service. So you can move from time-based processes to event-based processes. The next step is what we call Fusion containerized data, where we're actually doing that normalization. We're building the semantic layer, we're renaming the attributes for consistency, and then we're doing identifier resolution. And identifier resolution, when you think, oh, I got this feed from Bloomberg and this other feed from Refinitiv and another feed from MSCI, and isn't it easy, I could just use QSIPs. Well, sometimes they have QSIPs, they have ISINs, they have pseudols, they have word papiers, they have Figgies, all sorts of different identifiers. Sometimes they're overlapping. Sometimes there's dummy identifiers in there. And so even in the public markets, it's difficult. But in the private markets, it gets really interesting, right? Because Burgess will often just give you a textual name. And then there's other providers, Dun & Bradstreet will give you a textual name. You might have an LEI. So there might be some things to match on, but what we've done is sort of this step-by-step process where first we'll look, does the text match? Okay, that'll get rid of a bunch of them. And then we'll say, well, what if I capitalized everything? Now, did I add more into there? A lot of company names have abbreviations in them. Is it IBM or International Business Machines or Intel BizMatch? And so we'll use an LLM to expand all common abbreviations out to full names. And that improves the matching as well. But finally, you get to a point where you need to start doing some cluster analysis and thinking about, is there other reference data in the file that you can use to help match? Is there a state of incorporation that's common between the two? Is there a revenue figure that matches between the two? And you can surface that up to a data analyst or an operations person to give the approval that, yes, this is a valid match, let's create a rule for it. And so we go through our identifier resolution, we reformat all of the data to basically tables, so it's rows and columns. It could be Parquet files that we'll format it into. And then we start the linking process. So we'll create the link of all the relationships that are within the data. And finally, there's the data management aspect. And data management takes a few different forms. So one, you might think of waterfall. So I want to use this provider first, this other provider second, third provider. So maybe MSCI for scope 1 emissions first, ISS second, Sustainalytics third. It might be the same for your pricing, ICE first, Bloomberg second. You might also create derived attributes. You might have your own classification system. If it's above X capitalization, it means large cap, and below this, it's mid cap, so on and so forth. And then finally, you might want to express an opinion on your data. So you might get a data point from Bloomberg, for instance, that says this bond has a duration of 3.02 years. But your internal analytics system said it's 3.06. So we allow you to put in an override with a full maker-checker process, so that there's an auditable lineage with all of it. And so I say override explicitly because you can always get back to what was the containerized data or normalized data, what was the source data, who made the changes, so you can see the flow of data throughout the whole process. So that's sort of the business representation. I know a lot of people here are technical. We're using S3 buckets, Iceberg, Neo4j for the graph database to link everything. And then we've got a bunch of third-party things like a Datadog or Calibra for DQ. So we've integrated in a few third-party software as well. And so that's the high level of what we're doing with Fusion. And importantly, Fusion and Databricks have partnered in that when our clients are using Databricks, they want a seamless way to get their data from their security services provider into Databricks for analysis. And so we've built all the connections so that Fusion can deliver straight into our client's Databricks instance. So with that, thank you very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks, Jason. Next, we have a panel with Experian. So please welcome Brian Stack, VP of Engineering and Dark Web Intelligence, James Lin, Head of AI ML Innovation, and from Databricks, Barry Dauber.
How's everybody doing? Good? The session so far been good. I honestly haven't been here. I just ran here, so hopefully I'm not too sweaty, but glad to hear they're going well, and sorry for this half of the room that's behind me on a podium. But really appreciate the partnership with Experian. I know I've been with you both many times. And we all talk about it on a daily basis. You know, getting started with Gen AI is hard, right? I was at the Partner Summit this morning giving a keynote talking about, depending on who you ask, 85 to 90% of the customers we work with and customers other people work with are struggling to get from POC to production. And I know through our partnership, you all have been really successful, and it'd be great to understand like how you started and how you got to where you are today.
Great. Thanks, Barry, for having us. Yeah, I mean, I'll start off by saying the edifice of generative AI that's being built in front of us and around us is based on a foundation of data. Lots of it. Structured, unstructured, semi-structured. And the stronger your data foundation is, the stronger your generative AI architecture will be. At Experian, we really dove in headfirst about 18 months ago, and we focused on 3 theme areas. One was education, the second productivity, and the third was product development. Around education, you know, our view was generative AI can be used by every employee at the company. And so we started with a number of different training classes at all different skill sets. We also focus very heavily on educating our business owners in the C-suite on obviously the overall benefits, but the potential risks. So we wanted to be honest and upfront where we saw this headed. In terms of productivity, we've been investing pretty heavily in things like code generation and GPT builders, but at the very start, we set up an AI governance council. We wanted to encourage, you know, generative AI innovation and idea generation throughout the company, but at the same time, we were trying to make sure we didn't kind of have Gen AI sprawl throughout our global organization. So that provided a little bit of a gate to look at, you know, what products make sense to maybe bring in-house. I'm sure a lot of you are dealing with this. Every product you have probably in your ecosystem is bolting on something related to generative AI, whether you like it or not. So we're trying to figure out where does it make sense so we don't have a lot of overlap. In terms of product development, our direct-to-consumer business recently launched a digital financial assistant using RAG technology and GPT-4. And James and I, we had a slightly different take. We said, you know what, when this first started and we started to get funding, we wanted to focus on open source technology, using an open source base model based on and being trained on a large corpus of Experian data in order to kind of, in a sense, beat the market, we think, in terms of cost, speed of the retrieval of the data for the model, and then overall parity of performance compared to closed source. So we spent a lot of time working with Databricks. They've been a great partner with us in order to achieve parity for our use cases internally compared to using just GPT-4 with RAG out of the box. Some of the future, I think of where I see some of this heading is in probably a few areas. One is, everyone's heard that, 2023 was kind of the year of the POC. We view 2024 and probably into 2025 as the year of productization. And then 2026, I really think the trend is going to be around enterprise scale and ultimately personalization.
What happened to 2025?
Well, 2025, I think, will bleed into productization and continued people trying to launch with their product to see how it performs before you actually say, okay, we're ready for enterprise scale and personalization.
That's fair. So you talked about obviously partnering with us. We're at a Databricks conference. Again, appreciate the partnership. There's a lot of vendors, right, doing a lot of things. I'd argue there's a lot of misinformation and kind of people reaching over their skis. Ultimately, why did you end up deciding to partner with us?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think with any large financial investment or significant technical decision, you always need to step back and think about, first principles. What do you want this platform to look like, and what are the characteristics of it 2-3 years from now? In the products and services running on it, what are the characteristics and the principles you want 2 to 3 years from now? And we had about 6 kind of core first principles that we leveraged and looked at when we were evaluating Databricks. The first being cost controls. And so we wanted, obviously, to have open source base models at kind of the core of our fine tuning of our training. And so that's where we felt like we could get a lot of cost controls. We wanted flexibility. We wanted to be model agnostic, and that is obviously a big advantage point of working with Databricks. We've used probably at least a dozen or so we played with over the last 6 months. Very easily, we're able to basically serve them up, train them, and figure out, is this the right model for this use case? Accuracy. We've worked very closely with Databricks Professional Services, fine-tuning our models, both with supervised and unsupervised training, in order to get, again, parity with closed source models. Probably the fourth first principle for us was around governance. We're a highly regulated business, and even if you're not a highly regulated business, just understanding kind of the audit and traceability of how you're building your models, and then once they're deployed, if there is an issue, trying to get that traceability back so you know how to potentially retrain the model if it does start to hallucinate. The fifth first principle for us was around speed. When we first were leveraging several of the closed source models, it became pretty clear to me that kind of time to first token was way too slow, and trying to get the full responses for fairly complex questions, again, within our space of, I have an issue with my credit report, what do I do, how do I address it? Or I do a lot with identity protection, I have a dark web alert, what does this mean, what should I do? Being able to get that response back in under 3 seconds was a critical part of our success metric. And then kind of the final first principle we had, which may not apply to everyone, is deployment paradigms. So I think if you're doing enterprise anything, you need to have multiple deployment strategies, especially in regulated spaces, whether it be in the FI space or the healthcare space. Not all of your partners are going to connect to your API, running your model in your data center. And so the investments Databricks has made with things like the clean room technology that they're slowly starting to roll out, along with Marketplace, was a real big, I felt like, advantage for us to be able to, yes, build stuff in-house, serve it up through Databricks, but also provide other opportunities for other Databricks customers to be able to connect and use some of the technology we build through different avenues that doesn't require them sending us PII.
Okay, and then to answer the question again in a different way. So part of why we picked Databricks was last year at Data and AI Summit, we kind of saw like what Databricks was doing along with LLMs, specifically for us LLM ops. And as you saw the previous gentleman present, there was like a complex 12-step pipeline to get their predictive AI stuff to market. I don't know how much you guys know about Experian, but there's several different business units. So when Experian built out their predictive ML pipelines, there's 5 different CI/CD pipelines to get like ML ops to market that I know of. So one of the key corporate decisions was we need to pick one solution for the LLM ops where everyone will be happy for at least delivering the foundation model portion. And then when you build like the apps, then maybe each business unit can do their own thing. So in that regard, when we kind of did the POC to evaluate, one of the core competitor is probably AWS, because it's no secret that we're a big AWS shop. So kind of like the real big eye-opening thing was when we did like performance testing on inference. We got a number of kind of like the throughput, like the tokens per second that the Databricks inference would serve. And then on an equal like costs per hour instance on AWS, we got a much lower number. So we kind of went back to AWS and said, hey, we don't think your thing's right. There's a bug. Can you fix it for us? And like we're kind of doing a bake-off right now. So we gave them 2 weeks. They did improve their number, but in the end, the throughput on Databricks was still 3x the AWS number. So from the cost, kind of the principles that Brian was saying, all of those things kind of got validated as, okay, like this is real. We're gonna go down the route with Databricks.
And to put it simply there, I know we're talking about 3x and things like that and latency. Like, what is the real business value of being able to do that faster? Like, as a customer, I get my response back, but what can you do that you couldn't have necessarily done before?
So I think for us it's just like a cost thing because it's like you're able to get the responses back faster, but like you get stickiness with the customer, right? So like if they feel like the experience is done in a like a responsive manner, then they're more likely to interact with the bot. But I think the core thing is just like more throughput, so it's like cheaper, right? So.
And obviously this week you'll hear a lot about the data intelligence platform, the broader end-to-end, data prep through to model training and model serving. Did the end-to-end story play a factor in this as well?
Yes. Okay, so we basically end up using all of the Databricks products. So I think in order to deliver the product, we got into like all the preview products, as Brian said. But so like the first thing that was also really eye-opening was Mosaic, right? So on the Mosaic front, we basically decided we're going to fine-tune the models. When we underwent like the Mosaic trials, we found that it was fine-tuning a lot faster. And not only was it faster, at least subjectively at the time, we were like, hey, these answers are better. Like from there, then what we basically realized is, hey, in order to get better results from fine-tuning, we actually have to generate more data that is, the things that you can do, what they call instruction fine-tuning. So we utilize DBRX on the foundation model side in order to generate pairs. And in general, actually, we like DBRX kind of was new, right? So we used something else originally, and we found that the DBRX pairs were actually higher quality. The model like hallucinated less. It was generating more higher quality data. So we were able to use that data to then fine tune in Mosaic and get a higher performing model. And then the final thing was on the serving side. Like last year, everyone was very big on the vector databases. I think now they seem a little more of like a commodity, like everyone has their own vector solution. But in using the vector search from Databricks, we actually found that it's very more performant than like other solutions, and it scales very well. So basically, we're able to achieve kind of all the principles that Brian laid out.
That's awesome. And using the vector search, you're able to get governance across everything, I assume. For a heavily regulated space, that's hugely important.
Yeah,
too.
so if you kind of go into the whole ecosystem, then you get the end-to-end benefits. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that kind of one pro tip. You know, when you're trying to pitch this and talking about a lot of the governance and accountability, abilities of the Databricks platform, that mentioning that a lot of this technology that you're building is non-deterministic. Is something you want to try to generally avoid with legal and BizGov, unless you absolutely have to try to avoid as many heart attacks as possible. But being able to have Databricks, as a partner, we'd be able to say, this is how we've had an audit trail. We can use inference tables. It's available through the Unity catalog, and so it has provided kind of a safe space, so to speak, with our legal and governance teams to explain that, hey, even though this is non-deterministic, this is how we're going to add some observability before we launch our product.
That's awesome. Did the legal and BizOps teams actually see a difference? Because full transparency, that's awesome that you all saw this at Expedia. Experian. Sorry, my colleague told me I was going to say Expedia. Now I did. Experian. My apologies. I see other customers that are like Gen AI. Legal just shuts it down. I guess what beyond the governance, do you think your organization is more willing to lean in to be able to do this?
Yeah, we have leaned in, but obviously governance and compliance is built into our DNA. So we've had to go through a lot of hoops, which I think were completely justified, especially at this stage. But being able to show, explain in layman's terms and show here's an audit trail. Here's what we can verify that's working, and this is how we can retrain the model, deploy the model, has helped helped ease the conversation, because at the end of the day, this is non-deterministic. A lot of this stuff, which still makes a lot of people very nervous.
Absolutely, that's great advice. So on the legal side. On the technology side, what lessons learned, what takeaways did you have? What do you wish you knew, 6, 12 months ago? I know the space is changing rapidly, so it's hard to answer that part. But
No, that's a great question. So for 2024, if I could think of maybe 2 Gen AI bumper stickers, one would be annotated data is better than more data. We learned pretty early on that sometimes just adding more data to train your model, it actually performs worse. But if you have annotated labeled data that has a lot of intelligence inside of it, it actually helps. The other thing I'd say would be, LLM ops is not just a contemporary rebranding of the term DevOps. If you want to be serious in this space and build enterprise products, you're going to need new skills, new tools, and new processes. And I think, obviously, Databricks has been a huge ingredient in our success in that space. So that's probably not a bumper sticker, more of a billboard, but you get the idea.
Yeah, and then just to add, I think of the 6 principles that Brian said, I think what we found was the most important principle was flexibility, specifically around the foundation models. Like you all know, there's a new model out every week. If you build the correct framework and you kind of value the data side more, then the model starts to become more of a commodity. You have the kind of data pipes and processes in place that you can easily sub out the model. And I think the other thing I would say is the biggest bottleneck that we didn't see was evaluation. So you can build these models, you can hook them up, fine tune them, but how do you determine which one is better? It's kind of unclear until you have a solid evaluation framework in place. So once we had that, then that's when we were really able to accelerate.
That's a great call out. And we see a lot of our customers struggle with that, and they look at MMLU and all the other benchmarks and Mosaic Databricks. We have the gauntlet for LLMs. How did you all create your own evaluation frameworks? I think it's definitely important for folks to understand.
Yeah, so we built not my team, the other team, but they built kind of an enterprise-wide evaluation framework. So it's kind of segmented into 3 fields of data. One would be kind of the general Q&A that any Experian product would have to have. So it would just be the for whatever your company is, the general domain knowledge. The second would be the legal and compliance that we've talked about. So the things where people are trying to get past the chatbot on get it to perform poorly. And then the last would just be the use case specific. So our philosophy is kind of aligned with Databricks and like having smaller, more use case specific models. So when you have the use case, you want kind of a product owner or technical champion who can basically say, this is how we want the model to perform when these queries come up. So you develop some logic around what those responses should look like, and then you evaluate against those.
I'll just add one thing to that. So I think one of the things we are hoping for, hopefully coming from Databricks announcement soon, is probably more investment in evaluation frameworks in general. One of the big, I think, takeaways that I learned over the last 6 months also was that depending on your use case, the score of the evaluation frameworks that are out there aren't comparing apples to apples. So a great use case is, in our sense, is, we have a chatbot for our direct to consumers, right? They're calling, they're gonna log into our site. They wanna know about some credit. They wanna know about dark web. That answer is usually fairly lengthy, maybe a paragraph or two. However, we're building something specific for kind of our MCE chat, our MCE agents in our call center, and they want answers that are very concise with 3 bullets. So how a evaluation framework looks at both of those, it's really 2 different comparisons because those are slightly 2 different use cases. So be very critical of people saying, oh, there's this one evaluation framework that can kind of rule them all. I don't think that exists.
That's definitely a great call out. I know our research team would strongly agree with that. And I think our gauntlet had 34 different evaluation frameworks. But if you asked any of our research colleagues, they'd immediately tell you, which similar to what you all are doing, is the vibe check actually matters more than anything. It's like, oh, you have the highest score ever, but if all your agents are not happy with the responses, what does that score mean? So being able to evaluate in real time and do it really easily is also obviously very important. Any final thoughts? I think we only have a couple seconds left.
Yeah, probably the only other final thought is maybe don't be, if you feel like you're still unsure about how to get started, or you feel like, we have a lot of technical debt, in our kind of software pipeline, and that's going to hinder Gen AI growth. We said, we're going to generally start from scratch. And I think we've learned that's probably the best approach because, as I mentioned earlier in my first bumper sticker, like LLM Ops is not this exact same as your current DevOps and your current software pipeline. You will need to think about this very differently. And so don't feel like, our software's pipelines, hindered with all this other technical debt. Try to think of it in a separate space and try to see if you can build it in parallel.
So two things real fast. So I've been to a few conferences lately, and I think a lot of teams are hesitant to get started. I would say just get started. Like adopt that principle of flexibility and build out a way where you can sub things in and out. Everything you learn along the way can be. It's not like a negative when a new model comes out. You can reuse it. So just try like jump into the deep end of the pool and try to swim. And then the last thing is. Through the help of Databricks, we are planning to go into production on sometime in July. And our internal model within our internal framework beats the OpenAI by 20 points. And it has a time to first token of 1 second. So
that's absolutely incredible. One final thought on your point that I liked. What you said, dive in, head first into the deep end. Like, what is that first thing that people should think about doing? If I'm going to go do this, on Monday next week when I go into the office?
I think the first step is just getting an open source chatbot going and asking the first question. I would recommend it maybe a Llama 3 8 billion instruct right now would be the one. Maybe just query the foundation model API that you guys have too. It's way easier.
Definitely easier.
Well, talk to your boss first and educate them on why you're doing it, and make sure you have buy-in. So.
Thanks so much, Brian James from the Experian, not Expedia team. Really appreciate the partnership.
Appreciate it. Excellent.
Thanks to the Experian team. Next up, we have Rob Byrne, VP of Engineering from Mastercard.
Hello. So some hard acts to follow. So my name is Rob Byrne, Vice President Software Engineering. Work in the R&D division of Mastercard Foundry, based in the European Tech Hub in Dublin. So what I want to talk about today is we're quite new to Databricks in Foundry. Mastercard is using it in other areas, but we're fledglings compared to some of the other speakers. So we literally started in January. So what we wanted to do was build a chatbot. So it's yet another application of RAG. So the Mastercard Assistant is just a working title. It's not something we're launching or anything like that. It's for internal use. We wanted to see if, for product onboarding, we could ultimately speed up time to revenue for customers onboarding with Mastercard. And that's going into market test next week. So hopefully we're going to learn if our business case is effectively a good one. So just a bit about Foundry. We're a cross-functional organization, global in nature. Our sole purpose is to de-risk new product development, but we do that like through various pillars. So we have customer insights, which is essentially looking at emerging trends and customer insights. We've R&D discovery, where I live, and that's where the kind of technology muscle of Foundry. So we do things like building out market tests. We go end to end. We have our own infrastructure and tooling stacks that we maintain. So we have our self-sufficiency and we can move fast and break things. We have the CX and design folks who effectively conduct things like customer research, market research to make sure that we're building the right solution for the right customer. And then new product development, that's where we can go building out MVPs, getting partner and customer feedback with a view then to those graduating to scale. And then the growth operating system is we build new processes and platforms that are ultimately shared across the org. So as part of our assistant, we learned early on that there was a lot of appetite for this capability. So it started out around product onboarding, but there's probably about 60 use cases, 60 product lines that would like to leverage this. So we decided we'd come up with a domain-centric architecture. So by effectively teams bringing their documentation, their metadata, their Q&As, and their people, we can stand up a domain and they can use the front-end applications we've built to effectively operate that domain. It's all backed by Databricks. So Databricks is taking care of model and vector serving and also the lifecycle management of models and vectors. So just, I suppose, a little bit to double click on the architecture. So I've broken it into three there. So on the left is the data ingestion. So I'm sure most people here are familiar with RAG. So this is where we're taking in a growing multitude of document formats and metadata. We chunk them up and we store them in delta tables from Databricks, and then ultimately we use the vector indexing capability that's happening automatically as we populate our delta tables. We're using the foundation models to leverage embedding models that are there for us. That's on the kind of per token billing. And then over on the top right, this is where we have a human in the loop. So as questions are being asked and answers are being generated by the LLM, we capture those in a database and we put them through a review process with some humans. So the subject matter experts have the ability to effectively grade the answers, and they can also edit the answers. And we capture those edits so we can ultimately feed them back in to fine tuning or to use as a Q&A cache, which we also leverage vector search to drive that out. So we're dipping our toe right now into fine tuning. So we're leveraging the fine tuning API that's been recently launched. We haven't stood any fine tuned models up yet, but that's to come. And again, it's going to be a case of the economy of a fine tuned model versus a foundation model. So the journey from January to now, so essentially we stood up a workspace via ClickOps, so we could start learning about the whole thing. Essentially, we needed to upskill our folks. We had a call with Andrew. I don't know if he's here, but we were kind of pleased to see the sense of urgency where Databricks were willing to kind of get boots on the ground and help us with a POC. So we had some folks in from Databricks. We completed the POC into early March, and the results of the POC were quite promising. So we did have the mixtural model, which through manual grading was giving us around a 64% efficacy score. So to compute the efficacy, we came up with a rubric where we scored the answers from 1 to 5. Then we used Mistral and LLM as a judge. LLM as a judge was a little bit more optimistic. For people that don't know what that is, it's essentially using an LLM to judge the answer from another LLM and compare the answer to an expected answer. And then DBRX was just launched, so we decided we'd reevaluate with that, and we got another couple of basis points of a bump. So after the POC, we needed to kind of hunker down and kind of build out the MVP. So this is when we effectively plugged Databricks into our source control system, which is effectively Bitbucket, and we could turn the development then into a team sport. So effectively doing iterative development, feature branches, and merging back to develop. We then enabled the serverless features of Databricks. So this was foundation model, serving, and vector indexes. Prior to that, we were using open source models which were running in GPU-bound clusters. And then moving on, we effectively started to get ready for the push to production, or pilot production, I'll call it, where we started to use Databricks asset bundles, Databricks asset bundle templates. We enhanced our CI/CD pipelines to make them more aware of the Databricks CLI. And then we just came up with a very simple branching model to allow us to promote the RAG models up through the various environments. And then all going well, we'll be turning things on next week, bringing people in from the first cohort of test users to start using this and give us feedback. And that's it from me.
Folks, we can't have any more folks in here until there's no one standing in the back. So if we could move to the center just to open up some more spots, that would be great. There's peers out still waiting, trying to get in. Thanks, Rob. Next, we have Ricardo Portilla, industry principal at Databricks, to conduct a demo.
All right. So one of the most impactful ideas that basically transforms every financial services company into technology first is the idea of empowerment. And that means for data users, enabling your internal users to talk to your data, interrogate your data, and ultimately improve your product. For your external customers, that means finding new market segments and making every single financial service that you offer frictionless. So everything from making a payment to filing a claim to applying for a loan. So at Databricks, we've introduced data intelligence to simplify and optimize every single data service that you use. Whether that's ETL, whether that's data warehousing, whether it's Gen AI. And we believe in empowering every single user, which is every non-technical user from a product manager all the way to highly technical users like data scientists. So one of the customers that I think exemplifies this empowerment idea so well is Block. From their inception, their entire business model was economic empowerment. And they basically brought all of their smart payment solutions to 4 million small businesses. They enable internal users with governance systems like Unity Catalog to make decentralized decisions and move quicker. They enable their external customers by providing them with conversational onboarding experiences, all driven by Gen AI. So to give a little flavor of that democratization and empowerment, we're going to actually start with a Customer 360 demo. So Customer 360 is actually one of the most popular use cases on Databricks because it requires real-time data sources. Now, suppose I'm a chief customer officer and I've been asked to present to our head of product, head of sales, CMO, and our CFO. Now, they want to understand what the long-term strategy is for customer retention and for acquiring new customers. So on Databricks, I've put together a team of my analysts, and they're able to get all these metrics from me, all these KPIs. How many customers do we have? What is our total sales across every single product line? And my head of sales can easily see across all of my businesses, my short-term buy now, pay later business, my long-term loan business, my peer-to-peer payments. How am I doing? Now, every single data point you see here is backed by Unity Catalog. That includes transactional data, NPS data, and in fact, I can actually see my automatically generated descriptions that Databricks has created without having to have an individual come and hand code every single comment and piece of metadata. So this is data intelligence at work. Now, my head of product has asked me, let's take a look at customer engagement conversion. I can easily show the visuals here in the Databricks dashboard. This is kind of the front door to the lakehouse, if you will. I can see that my engagement rates look great. If I want my business analyst to ask new questions, Databricks is completely context aware. It understands where your transactions data is. I can use the assistant to automatically generate new queries, and I can pop them into this dashboard as a new widget. Again, all of this is powered by all the internal knowledge the assistant knows about which queries you've issued, what dashboards you've created. So the more you use this system, the smarter it gets. Now, on to my conversion rates. I have high engagement across all of my products, but I can see a major gap in my conversions. So specifically for my investment products, I have huge areas and room to improve in this entire scope. I can see the literal white space when I look at my customer segments. So all of those high value customers, meaning everybody that spends high dollar amounts in my other apps, my peer-to-peer payments apps, and spends very frequently, are completely missing in my converted customers. Now, the dashboard is excellent for showing or reading the news, what's going on. But my head of product or head of sales has asked, this isn't usually how we look at the data. Can you create a new visualization for me? So using the Databricks intelligence engine, I can come into the dashboard and start to answer a new question that sales has just asked me, which is break down the data by date. I always look at our sales data over time. So I can come and type in to the specific visualization, show me adoption by product. I want to look at a time series. I want to see what this looks like over time. So not only do we list every single data set that has a date in it, we translate that adoption metric into the sum of spend. So the intelligence engine is figuring out under the hood, how do I translate the natural language questions all the way into my BI visualization, which I can then accept or reject based on accuracy. So all of that data intelligence is not only brought to the assistant, it's brought into Unity Catalog for Gen AI-based descriptions, as well as things like this. Now, my head of product has now just told me, again, this is a really great breakdown of all of your KPIs and products, but what if we have a new question? And that's why Databricks introduced what we call Genie Data Rooms. So Genie Data Rooms is BI meets chat interface, means data intelligence. So all of the data that you have as part of your banking system, you can upload from Unity Catalog into this space. And if I have brand new questions I want to ask, any non-technical user can come into this space. Everything is fully governed by Unity Catalog, and I can ask a new question, like summarize my customer complaints by category. We are going to automatically look at every single data source, whether it's NPS, customer complaints, web app data. We will automatically detect exactly which columns to use in your data and generate this description. So we've got a summarization by each product line. I have summarization by complaints. It automatically visualizes and creates all of that code under the hood. If you want to ask new questions that are completely separate, show me based on social media what the major growth rates are and major trends. I've just asked a new question. And again, it's gone into my social media trend data. It's gone through the market segment, the total addressable market, the growth rates, and figured out we should be looking at market segment and summarize that data. So as I can see, the major gap that I have in my data is digital investment apps. Offering these investment products is actually a big growth trend that we're seeing externally. So my head of product can now think about actioning on this specific insight. Now we have this non-technical user experience. Again, my head of product says, well, show me how we can action inside of Databricks. Now that you have this knowledge, what can we use? Where do we source the data from to improve our products? Well, Databricks has a marketplace. This is fully powered by Delta Sharing, which was covered earlier. And we have everything from models to data to solutions accelerators, a comprehensive ecosystem, which is all powered by Delta Sharing and Unity Catalog. So if I want to expand and augment the data I have to become more data-driven, I can acquire new data. So if I type digital asset, you'll see Amber data, NASDAQ data sets, REARC data, all these different data sets in the ecosystem that I can now use to import into my governance system. If I want to look for banking-specific data sets, I will find CoreLogic. I will find financial solutions, marketing analytics from Axiom that I can now use to import into my Unity catalog and query with those data rooms or with one of the BI dashboards I showed earlier. Now, these are strategies for acquiring external data. What about all of that siloed internal data that you probably have as part of your regulated enterprise? Well, Databricks has an entire ecosystem of partners so that if you want to ingest data from your on-prem SQL server, I can do it with native ingestion connectors like Archeon and Fivetran. Once I'm ready to analyze that data, we partner closely with Power BI, with Tableau, to embed all of the models and create those analytics like next best action directly in your dashboards. If I want to transform the data or extend all of that transformation to my no-code, low-code users, I can use tools like Prophecy. And lastly, once I'm ready to expose that data into external systems, maybe my CRM, so I can understand that next best action, or understand my customer base, or even create that semantic layer with my universal metrics layer across all of Databricks for all my business users, I can use @scale, which creates cubes, and all of the business level metrics for my organization. Now, these have been the ways to acquire the data, but again, at every step of the way, every data service that you're going to be using in Databricks will now be powered by this Databricks intelligence. So as you start to use the data, as you start to orchestrate the data, as you start to use data warehousing for analytics, it will understand what queries you're issuing. It will understand the business questions you're asking. If you ask it to summarize revenue, it will automatically be able to scan all of your resources and your data sets and your dashboards and create that intelligence to deliver better solutions for your organization. This is Data Intelligence. Thank you.
Thanks, Ricardo. Next, we have Mohammad Hamidian, Senior Director, Advanced Analytics and AI with Manulife John Hancock, and Marcela Granados, Industry Expert here at Databricks.
Great to see you as well. So I had to run from Moscone West to Moscone South, and I literally got a text from Junta saying, you need to be here on time. So apologies if I'm running out of breath.
Do you want me to moderate?
So we're super excited to have Mohammad here. Just as background, he is a Senior Director of Advanced Analytics and AI at John Hancock. He's also a physicist, which I think is pretty exciting. He spent time in labs at some of the most prestigious universities like Cornell and Harvard University. And we're very lucky to have him here with us today. Something else, so he's very humble. And what happened is that the solution he has been able to build on Databricks won the CEO award. I'm going to ask him just a couple of questions on, how did he build it? what are some of the challenges and other things. So first question for you, Mohammad. What are the trends that you're seeing in the insurance industry, and how does the vision that you have around AI fits into the broader mission and vision that John Hancock has as a company?
Great, thanks, Marcela. So within the insurance industry, fintech, or not fintech, but financial services, has different levels of maturity. But one thing that you start to see is the expectations of the customer. They want to see a holistic solution from the companies they're interacting with. So when they call into one call center asking about one product that they bought from you, and then can I ask you about the other one? They're like, well, sorry, you got to call the other call center. I don't have your data here. That's important. And it's not just financial. I know a telecom company, I won't say which one, where like I had a phone and I had home internet, and they didn't talk to each other. So yeah. So the idea comes about of, well, how do you pull all of this together, especially when you're in an industry that it's old, and so it's not born in the digital age. You're also having a lot of actors in there who are not digital themselves. So if you're selling insurance and you have an insurance agent who might have a file cabinet somewhere, to try to get them to interact with you digitally is challenging. And I'm going to talk about the long-term care space too, where as you get to the older customers, then it's also difficult to say, can you give me the data? Do you want to interact with us digitally? So to get to digital and to get to AI is actually a journey to transform your services. And I'm going to give you the fax example. Before fax, there was mail. So when people went to fax, you're like, I got digital. But not really, because there's still a guy in the fax room who's like trying to type this stuff in. And then you took the fax and said, well, I'm going to create a website, and then you can upload your form to me. I'm like, okay, well, that's the next best thing. But then there's another person who takes your PDF and then has to enter the data. So these motions towards digitalness actually aren't always smooth, but you start to realize you can't access all the information that you need, and then you really need a proper digital solution. So for us, the enablement comes from the fact that the customers want a holistic view, and to serve them rapidly, quickly, you need that. And then the other part about it is, and I'll get into a little bit later, is you want to scale the interaction with your customers, and you can't scale if every 2 customers you add, you have to double the size of the people that you have at your company. So those are the things that, as we build our strategy, the AI piece and putting the data together is going to help the sort of that customer-centric view.
Perfect, thank you. So tell us a little bit about the solution, the fraud solution for long-term care that you built. And specifically, we heard it from Junta during the keynote. Fraud has been going on for a while. And to be able to innovate within fraud, what were the business outcomes that you were driving for the customers as well as for your company?
Yeah, that's great. I'll give you a little bit of background on long-term care for those of you that may not have it. This is like insurance you buy in your 40s and 50s, such that once you get into your 70s, your 80s, and you're sick and you need someone to take care of you, you have an insurance. And there's a great New York Times article series to show you like the financial impact on people who don't have insurance, or even that do, of spending to take care of themselves in old age. So John Hancock, at the time of selling long-term care insurance, sold about 1 million policies. Currently, we have about 900 in force. At any given time, 40,000 people are on claim, meaning they want care, and you're paying out $2 billion a year in the care costs. And that number is going to grow over time, the number of people who are on claim. And then the industry metrics tell you there's about 3 to 5% fraud in this space. So you take $2 billion and then you grow it over time, and you say 3 to 5, that's an enormous amount of money. So the impact on the financials is pretty clear, but it's also an impact on the customer, because the more that we are paying for the bad actors, the more it impacts people's premiums, impacts re-rates, and so forth. So back in late 2022, there was an initiative that said, we got to tackle fraud, and from the executive level down, they went big. They said, we're going to put it down. We're going to enable new squads. And one of the squads enabled was the fraud analytics team, which didn't exist, and so we built it. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, we said, okay, so what do you build to get you to a modern fraud detection technology? So as we were building the team, we said, well, one of the things that's going to be really important is to pull all the data that we have together. And remember, we're in an old company. Admin systems, they have different data schemas, they have different representations. They don't even, well, I won't get into that. But you try to pull it together. So one of the things we came with is like, I think we need a proper data layer. And the knowledge graph, so graph databases and with semantics included, became a central requirement to build a fraud solution. And the idea was that this clean layer wasn't just going to enable the fraud analytics, but it was also going to enable the other squads that got set up. So now you have an experimentation team who's going to say, what are the new controls you can put into place? How much does it impact? We have document intelligence that got set up. Say, well, now you want to start to interact with document intelligence, people submitting forms. We extract the data from it. Does it look consistent with the stuff they've submitted before? So that enabled us to say that this is the knowledge layer we need. And once we got all the data in there, actually, so just for people that don't know what a knowledge graph is, just quickly, the idea that every data point can be represented as an entity, and then you try to embed those relationships directly with other entities as relationships. And so you could do this via a SQL query, for example, right? And you would do like 7 joins to try to get to what you need, but you can directly embed it into the data. And so it both enables you to have a semantic representation, but then it also allows you to allow other people, like fraud investigators, to look at it and be like, I see the entire history of this claim in front of me. So that was particularly important. And then for long-term care, this is what our data model looks like. And at this point, this particular graph that we constructed has almost 200 million nodes in it and 300 million edges to represent the entire long-term care ecosystem within John Hancock. So by building this, we also then had to do one more thing. Because as I said, when people started to enter this data into the admin systems long ago, no one said, well, do I have this record already? Should I enter a new record? And so we realized we had to do entity resolution. And I remember at the time, one person from IT said, don't do it. There are vendors out there that do it. It's a hard problem. And I bet him a beer. And we did it. And he owed me the beer last week, so it was great. But it was a situation where we had to really roll up our sleeves and create it. And I'll get to it in the architecture slide here, where to enable you to have hundreds of millions of records, to try to create a consolidated data layer, to do entity resolution. And we're doing it in a space where the back-end systems, the admin systems, don't properly track when things are changing. And so you can't just go back to the admin system and be like, which record changed, and I'll update my knowledge graph. We literally have to drop and recreate the graph on a daily basis, and it's a 10-hour load time. And so the Databricks piece actually is what gets you going there.
This is awesome, thank you. I can't help but think about governance, right? So, there's the shiny objects and the shiny things and UIs and graph analytics, but what was the process that you and your team had to go through when thinking about governance and lineage, not only of the data, but also on the assumptions, on the model itself? Yep. Walk us a little bit of just like from Data Python's perspective, like what were the data sources that you use from structure, unstructured? What were some of the challenges that you had on just like running that data all the way to insights, and how do you solve for those?
So we do have a pretty comprehensive governance structure at John Hancock Manulife. It's a little manual, but you do have a lot of discussions you have to have with legal and compliance and cybersecurity and operational risk and so forth. So there's a lot of new data sets that came in, and then obviously we had to go through them. And they wanted to understand what the data was being used for, and they want to see. So the construction of our data dictionary, showing how that data evolves, was something that we were managing through. Additionally, the governance initially when we set this up, I said this went all the way to the top, and so we were having discussions with C-suite people every 2 weeks. So it was a lot of high pressure, and they always wanted to know, what are you doing? How is it impacting you? So the governance was both from the point perspective: are you keeping track of the data? What data are you keeping track of? Are you only using it for fraud purposes? Because we set this up for fraud. Are you going to use it for marketing? The other piece of the governance, which I think once we got to model building, was that we were experimenting a lot, because you don't know with fraud what's going to stick. So you try to 25 solutions, and one of those is going to give you the solution that says, oh, the detection rate is higher. But you don't know. So you're creating the model, you're sending the referrals to fraud investigators, and they're quickly going through it, and they're giving you feedback. But you need a catalog that says which model sent which referral to which fraud investigator, and what was the feedback that you got. And so there was a governance structure there too, to be able to have the metrics that you're tracking each of the models individually to get you to that.
Perfect. The other question that we have is Gen AI. Everybody's talking about it. I remember last year, exactly at this conference, that's when we had made the announcement of us acquiring Mosaic, and people were still a little bit skeptical, especially in regulated industries. So just like, what's the real value? Is this going to last? And if so, like, why would I go and just like overcomplicate my process for this? So for a company as big as John Hancock, with great smart people, what are the Gen AI use cases that anything that you can share, right?
Sure.
Like what use cases do you guys actually have into production? And then part 2 of the question is, what are the other Gen AI high value use cases that are not into production yet?
Right.
And if so, like, what's stopping you from that?
So just like some of the previous speakers, the Gen AI use cases for call center, for example, long-term care products are complicated. And once again, they were created at a time when they were pieces of paper, and then someone scanned, and there was no necessarily structured data at the time. So there was a lot of work, and actually it's in this pilot mode that the call center can have within it now a chatbot to query the particular contract of the person who's calling in, because most people, when they call in, they're like, what does my policy cover? And you have to be able to answer that pretty quickly. So that's something that's that my colleagues, some of them are here, help build as an initial use case. There is another use case in the life insurance side, is to optimize campaigns for selling life insurance. And the idea of just being able to have quickly access to the data, to have someone on their phone, a producer, say, hey, what is the current performance of my campaign? Who do I need to contact? And so forth. That's the use case that's also in flight right now. The initial version of it, sort of based on rules, is going, but the active development. The one piece on here for entity resolution, for example, because data obviously is dirty in some of these systems, we had to say, well, how do we match it against a clean data set? So for example, there are a lot of businesses in this particular data set where there are duplicates, but how do you know there are duplicates? And so we went back and said, okay, let's start with the transformers. Let's try to understand the transformer embeddings, and then take our data, match it, let's say, to a Google data set or to a Dun & Bradstreet data set, and then try to construct the relationship. So then you start to create that much, much cleaner data set for your businesses. For document intelligence, where you're extracting data points from an image, there's a lot of blurriness and fuzziness. And so you almost need context to be able to fix that data. So one of the other use cases is if you're reading from a chart, let's say it's an invoice, and there's something that might be a little bit smudged out, but you don't want to contact the customer to do it, and you want to do this all in an automated way, is the context that you're giving to the large language model is able to infer what that smudge could have been based on some of the other data that's in the form or other forms that you had.
Perfect. I guess one other question, kind of like personal question. So from the time you were in labs experimenting to dealing with corporate America, what are some of the things that you find different? And like obviously like delivering on projects, and like anything that you can share with just, I guess, like how long did it take you approximately to just do all of this experimentation, test all of these things, whether or not it's working, like how big was the team? And also, how do you get visibility all the way to your CEO to just pay attention to what you and your team were doing?
Yeah, so I said, starting out as a physicist, I always try to stay technically involved, so I have a team. But the idea of experimentation is, we always find important, because you can always do what the other person's doing, but then you're not going to do any better than what the other person's doing. So we have a bit of a culture to say, we're going to try something new. And we have a good agile methodology. Like data science and agile don't work together well all the time. But sometimes if you give a data scientist a box of time and you're like, this is how much time you have to learn something, it focuses the brain a little bit. And so that's been helpful. But then you take a step back and say, hey, I need a little bit more time to do it. And you do it. So we have to be pretty nimble. You can't stick to that strict, which is very different than physics, where you come in, they're like, I'll see you in 5 years with my thesis. And you definitely can't do that. So I learned that very quickly as I transitioned to industry. And then the visibility up to the CEO. So the award we won was actually an external award by an industry watchdog who was looking at various things, and then it got back to the CEO. We won this, and he was extremely excited. I think I have to give credit to the people at the top who said, we're going to double down and we're going to give the team the resources it needs to do this work. It's not this, well, we'll give you a little bit, we'll see what happens in 3 months and so forth. I think the people who convinced them said, put together a bunch of smart people, give them the resources and go. And then we delivered. And then therefore his investment came back as like, oh, I made a good investment. So I think those are particularly important. And I would say what's transformed since then is that there's a lot of transformation and technology happening in long-term care insurance in our company. And advanced analytics now sits at the table for strategic decision-making, because it's pretty critical that you can't, it's not all a business decision. There's a lot of input you need from the data scientists, the data engineers, who can say what is possible, and to try to stretch people to say, that can be automated. This is going to be really hard to automate. Maybe we'll do it in a different way. So all that together, I think we built a lot of credibility, and sometimes it takes in increments, but as you build credibility, you'll get a seat at the table.
Okay, well, perfect. Thank you, Mohammad.
Thanks, Mohammad. Next, we have Barb MacLean, SVP, Head of Technology Operations and Implementation at Coastal Community Bank.
I'm here to talk about what is banking as a service and how does one do this, across a country as vast as this one. My name's Barb MacLean. I'm head of technology at Coastal Community Bank, and all I know how to do is financial services technology. It's a good thing there's a lot of banks and other financial institutions that need people like me. Core banking migrations and building integration platforms and modernizing analytics stacks. That's where my expertise lies. But in my spare time, which is a skill set that's impossible to monetize, I really enjoy music. So if you're ever hanging out on LinkedIn on Sundays, you'll find me publishing the intersection of fintech and music in the fintech playlist. So hit me up with your suggestions. So that's a little bit about me. And you've heard some great words from folks from some of the larger organizations that you all know well, but you're probably all wondering, who the heck is Coastal Community Bank anyway? So we're a financial institution with a branch network in Washington State, and we primarily serve business banking through our 14 retail branches. But maybe more interestingly, we've been delving into banking as a service for the last number of years. And we have 21 fintech partnerships, and we serve millions of customers from coast to coast, and bringing our own brand of banking for good to the nation in that way. Banking as a service is a relatively new adventure in financial services. It's getting all the press these days, so you've probably been reading about that. We're very proud of the partnerships we form there and how we bring those relationships way beyond the geographic reach of our original branch network in the state of Washington. And you might be wondering, how does a small community bank in the state of Washington, way far away from any of the global centers of commerce, do this? Well, come with me on a meme-filled journey, and I'll show you. So surviving as an independent community bank, Junta was talking about it, what does survival look in financial services? It's not easy. Banking as a service definitely isn't easy. If it were, everyone would be doing it. And this industry is full of challenges. So challenge number one, especially for us, through banking as a service, much of the data about our customers actually lives outside of our domain. Hundreds of data sources that you don't control, and they're constantly changing. And it's kind of fruitless to try and make the outside sources change. So this is complexity that you have to take on the responsibility for solving yourself. No one is going to fix this problem for you. And hopefully you're not kind of making your team feel like this. Challenge number two, legacy technology. So my guess is in a room full of banks and financial services providers, no one here can claim that they have zero legacy technology to deal with. It's especially fun when your team is responsible for maintaining that one little piece, and props to all you open source maintainers out there, for sure. For us in banking as a service, this is a especially complex game since that customer data experience is driven by our partners. We don't own that customer experience, they do. And it's outside of our technical estate. Hands up if you have at least one Excel worksheet in use in one of your teams that drives a critical business process. Super bonus points if it has macros. Really bonus points if the person that built those macros don't work there anymore. And all of you that didn't put your hands up, you're totally lying, or your team is lying to you. So our challenge here, of course, is the world is running at real time, but financial services runs at the speed of batch. How do we marry up the two? Who you trust is a challenge. Vendors will try and convince you, and they, will try and convince you really hard. Believe me, I see you all on my emails. I'm not reading them, just so you know. They're gonna try and convince you to use the wrong tools for the job. Niche industry players and well-known brands. Python in Microsoft Excel, really? Who actually thought that was going to be a good idea? The playing field of financial services is a challenge. So in banking, our friends from JPM are kind of like the Yankees. And, we here at Coastal, we're sort of like the Oakland Athletics. And so yes, our team is definitely totally this cool. But really the fundamental question still remains. How does a small community bank remain independent and relevant and not only survive, but thrive? You transition to doing this differently than you ever have before. And we can't play the same game that the giants of banking are playing. So we need to harness that complexity of data engineering and model management instead of being buried by it, and turn dealing with those hundreds of data sources with dynamic and changing data patterns into a strength. And we do this by being unbanky. Being unbanky is one of our core values. And so we find ways to work to move that needle forward, even if it isn't something that a bank would typically do. Banking as a service is definitely not typical. So how do we use technology for good in banking? How do we do right by the everyday people that we are here to serve while keeping bad actors out of the financial system? Well, we care for customer data as the most important asset that we hold. Data is the new asset. So in order to do that well, you have to choose. Choose the right tools, choose the right partners, choose the right team, and the right approaches. 17 months ago, our initial architecture for our new data platform that we needed to greenfield build had a little asterisk alongside some of the components that said may be replaced by Databricks. And here you see a more current depiction of our architecture. Databricks has become much more than a potential asterisk for us. Its unified platform is one of the keys to our success. We're replacing SAS, which had accidentally become our operational data store, Azure Data Factory, manual Python scripts, and dare I say some oldies but goodies, there were definitely VB scripts rolling around out there, and yes, Excel workbooks full of macros. We're able to use these fit-for-purpose tools like delta sharing with our partner One Finance to help them sunset Google BigQuery and share data securely and easily. So we had a working session between our engineering teams, and in under 10 minutes, data showed up in our workspace. Ever sat on a call, working session, trying to exchange SFTP credentials and who's got the SSH keys, and oh man, I don't really have the right person on this call. We don't have to worry about any of that anymore. No more key management, or files need to be chunked up because they're too large to be received, or they failed, or they didn't process and they need to be resent. At Coastal, all of these partnerships mean something. We're able to bring banking for good to many other communities of people outside of the geographic range of our branches. And these aren't just vendor-customer relationships that we choose to call partnerships, like we do so often in the industry because it makes us all feel better about just buying somebody's product. These are capital P partnerships with shared skin in the game. The same values, being invested in achieving outcomes together. And so we've benefited greatly from our partnership with Cavallo Technologies, who work as an embedded member of our team. They architected and designed our entire new technology estate and enabled us to greenfield build from scratch our data platform. And they're teaching us engineering and data science expertise. And yes, they helped introduce us to Databricks. So Rob Cavallo and his team are here today, and I'd be happy to introduce any of you to their team. And this is the team that helped us drive value in a way we never have before inside the bank. Along this journey, we knew our only hope for simplifying our ecosystem and driving results quickly was bringing engineering to data. And it's not as common an approach as you might think. Having full ownership over those end-to-end processes gives us a competitive edge because we can use our small size and nimbleness as a competitive advantage. If securely sharing data in under 10 minutes isn't enough for you, here's some more stories of the results that advantage is driving for us. We've taken a key scoring engine that runs across our entire customer population of millions of records down from 2 days to 30 minutes. And now it runs reliably and consistently, unattended, daily. It makes a big difference when your regulator asks you to provide evidence for a specific time frame, and you can provide them with an answer within minutes and not days. We've implemented unattended processing in other areas with human-in-the-loop automated approvals only when needed, and that reduced processing costs for that process by 80% and failures to 0. So these things are not optional when people are depending on you to get paid so they can put groceries on the table for their families. Thanks to Josh and Summer from the Databricks team for their help in identifying a key change that we implemented on the Friday afternoon of the New Year's Eve long weekend that resulted in a 25% cost reduction. So yes, you too can implement changes on Friday afternoon of a long weekend. Let's normalize Friday deploys, everybody. Our team is proof that a community bank whose technology budget isn't even a rounding error compared to the globally significant FIs out there, how we can charge up this maturity curve quickly. Our early AI experiments are demonstrating that we can save 520 hours per teammate for compliance processes. We are targeting having AI deployed at scale in production across our organization, and I'm not just talking about the co-pilots. As Junta says, AI is the easiest part about AI. You have to do the work to get your data estate in order, and you can't skip those steps. And we're very glad that we've invested the last 17 months in doing so. When you have a highly skilled, highly autonomous, intrinsically motivated team who have unwavering executive and board support, to whom you give the right tools and then unleash them and get out of their way, they're going to produce results that you have never seen before. We aren't building flying cars. But we are proving that small banks can win when you have the right team, the right approaches, the right tools, and the right partners. It's a real pleasure for me to get to tell the story of the great work our team is doing, and I'm immensely proud of what we've done so far. Thank you to the entire Databricks for inviting me to share our story today. It is the best part about my job to tell that story. You can check out the blog we've written together, along with the case study we authored with the Databricks team on their site. And I hope you all have a great rest of the summit and enjoy hearing about our friends from TD Bank who are up next.
Thanks, Barb. Our last customer speaker for the day is going to be Luke Guy from TD Bank.
It was always a risk. Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Luke G. I'm the head of analytics and AI in TD Bank. We are an enterprise function spread across the whole of our bank. We cover a number of areas, which I'll get into in a second. But we're basically responsible for creating great customer outcomes for our colleagues and customers using data. TD is a 169-year-old bank, and about 60 years ago, roughly to the day actually, certainly in this month, we had our first TV commercial. And the commercial had a slogan, and the slogan was, "The bank where people make the difference." And we hold that brand really close. We're a very people-centric organization. And one thing that we try to do is think about how can data augment the experience. That's what my team are charged fundamentally to do. So in terms of scale, we've got about 28 million customers across Canada and the US. We offer offerings in terms of retail banking, business banking, securities, wealth, investments, insurance. We have just over 2,000 retail locations, plus number of call centers, and we have about 16 million digitally active customers who are either online or on the mobile app with us. So despite having a high physical presence, our digital capability is also well adopted. We are the second largest bank in Canada. We are within the top 10 in the US, and the sum of the parts makes us about the sixth biggest bank in North America as a whole. So I tell you this because we're heavily complex. We have a number of things that we need to offer our customers. We need to operate across our different businesses. And geographically, we're spread from coast to coast to coast. So let's talk about the AI strategy, about how we get after that particular problem. How do we meet the needs of our customers? So for us to achieve this, operationally, we want to try and bring AI to the front of our business units and our front line. We're essentially trying to bring data from the back office to the front of house. How do we make sure that we can bring it right to our colleagues, and how can we operate with a great customer experience? We also want to embed AI into business decisions. You've heard this a number of times today. How do we make sure that we use the asset that we have, all of our customers' data, to make sure that we can make the best possible decisions? And how do we transform that colleague and customer experience? We want to make sure that our colleagues appreciate and enjoy the use of AI. And we'll get onto a use case in a second, which we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to take you through the journey that we've been through. Prior to today, the last two conferences, my colleagues have come and spoken about our cloud migration. And so I was asked to come and talk about the end of the migration and at least what we're doing now with it, with some impact. What's actually happened, what's impacted our customers. So there's three use cases that I'll get into, but I just want to whet your appetite so that you stay with me for the next 8 minutes. So the first thing, using Gen AI, we've reduced hold times by about 20%. We'll talk through that. Second one, term life insurance applications. We've gone from 22 days to seconds, and we've increased the approvals that we can offer by about 10%. And then the third one, we've improved our residential lending offering. We're going from tens of minutes to seconds in terms of our pre-approvals. We'll get into the detail of that in a second. Hopefully that's enough interest to keep you here. So let's start at the foundation, what we've put together. None of this is my work. This is all another team, Data as a Service, a lot of whom are here today. And we've been building this journey for a while. So Organizationally, we're complicated. We've grown up through organic growth as well as acquisition. And so as a result of that, bringing our data together is substantial work. We wanted to centralize our data to make sure that we have one version of the truth, the same answer to the same question every single time. We want to have great quality data. We want to have good lineage. Because without decent data, AI is just A. There's no intelligence there. We wanted to enhance our governance and controls. When I think back to when I started as an analyst, I'll be honest, life was a bit easier. I was able to do things, maybe on the edge, but it was easy for me to get through our control partners. Regulations have changed, times have changed. We wanted to make sure that we can simplify that and maintain our adaptability. We wanted to unlock tools and capabilities. We want to make sure that all of our data scientists, all our ML engineers have the best tools available to them so that they can go after the most complex business problems. We wanted to increase scalability. We want to make sure that we have a stable platform, less downtime, straightforward pre-processing. We wanted to make sure that we were able to take in new data when we needed to. And then the final one, operational efficiency. How do we reduce the cost of ownership? How do we make sure that we've got a modern stack? How do we make sure that we're not having to upgrade and update regularly? So this brings us to our foundation. Now we move to scaling AI. You can't do that without talent. So the second thing we did was we thought about talent. So in 2018, we bought an AI company. This is called Layer 6, and that allows us to really move forward. Like I said, we're a Canadian bank, and what comes with that is a level of reserve, a level of conservatism, which for a Brit is quite hard to say. But the reality is, we're conservative. And so we needed something to give us a bit of a jolt and move us forward. And Layer 6 did that. It helped us think differently. It helped us go after different problems. They were a global leader in ML and predictive analytics. And we started with about 15 people in that team. And we now have around 230 AI ML specialists. These guys sit within the 2,500 analytics and data science users we have. We have a large community of people helping our business. This team has also delivered over 200 AI-specific patents in the last 2 or 3 years, and there's been over 100 models built. Last year, they delivered 14 research papers as well, and these have been communicated at a number of academic forums. So, told you about the data platform, told you about the talent, but I saw a title of a talk earlier on today called Scaling AI, It Takes a Village. And it really does. It takes a lot of people, a lot of departments to actually scale AI and make it move. And so we realized as we were rattling through our models that we needed to standardize our approach, because all we were doing was pushing new models down the pipe to our control partners, model validation, compliance, and they needed to do their work as well. So we standardized our model development, our deployment, and our monitoring, which meant it was much easier for them to say yes and much harder for them to say no. And actually, we learned as we did this. We became much more compliant in terms of what they needed to see in order to allow us to use a model. And also, I'll be honest, it became much friendlier. It started out as a slightly adversarial relationship, but it got better. So, we talked about the data foundation, we talked about the talent, we talked about how we're trying to make the overall process simpler. Let's go back to these 3 use cases. So, the AI virtual assistant in the contact center. This is something that we spoke about at our tech day. We released the information about it about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So we're a complex bank. In terms of interactions on phone, about 60 million a year. So there's a lot of conversations happening, very, very high volume. We have multiple policies and procedures. It's an extremely hard job to be one of our phone agents. It's difficult. And our customers expect a great customer experience and great help. And so what we wanted to do was use Gen AI to improve that scenario. We wanted to provide a natural language situation where the question can be put in, the answer can come out, and there's limited hold time and there's no handing off. And that's what happened. So this thing essentially allows you to type in, it's very similar to GPT that most of you will have used, I'm sure. But what comes back is the paragraph of the policy or the procedure and a citing of the specific procedure as well, meaning that the agent is able to validate the response that we're getting back. So we're eliminating hallucinations. Really important for a human-in-the-loop AI system, and one that actually has generated a lot of support from our colleagues. Again, going back, we're a people-first bank. We want our colleagues to enjoy using this capability. As a result of this, we dropped hold time by 20%. That's an average. So if you think about new agents who have been with us for a few months and actually are really learning, that hold time was way longer. And so the average there is across a broad range of our agents. And the consult rate, this is where someone hands off to their line manager in order to get the answer. We reduced that as well. So less handoffs, less hold time, better customer outcome, and the colleagues really enjoyed using it. So term life assurance, the second example. We've got machine learning operating at high speed here. We had a problem. We were trying to build the business. We were trying to grow quickly, but we couldn't get through the applications quick enough. And so we wanted to make sure that we could use all our data capability to deliver a better outcome, faster outcome for our customers. The underwriters were seeing so many applications. The benefit here was we're able to take it from 22 days to seconds, meaning that our underwriters can help customers with more complex needs. And they can put all of their time there, allowing us to rattle through these more simple applications. So not only was it quicker, but we increased our approval rates by 10% as well, helping more customers again. Okay, and the final one. So mortgage and home equity line of credit, or HELOCs as we call them. Pre-approvals here. We know that buying a home can be a really stressful process for our customers. And so we want to make sure that we can take the stress out of that as well as we can. And that means pace and response, pace from the application. And so we built a model that allowed us to respond more quickly to the application itself. We went from 50 minutes down to seconds. And again, the underwriters have more capacity to help more customers. So we have more customers applying, we have more approvals, we have more happy customers, we have more business. It's all good. As a result of this, actually at the last results, we're up quarter, year on year in this particular portfolio, highest growth rate out of everybody in Canada. Okay, many people will be wondering, what's a green share got to do with the price of cheese? Well, this is actually, we're the #1 brand in Canada, and the major brand point that our customers recognize is this chair. And they recognize it because 60 years ago, when we had that commercial and we said, where people make the difference, it was all about coming in and meeting your branch manager and having a conversation with them. And so this chair still resonates today. I've had many an argument with marketing about whether it really does, but I've seen the results of the research and it genuinely does. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we can bring data to our customers, make sure that we can maintain the trust that this chair actually generates. And we need to make sure that we can actually deliver an outstanding experience at high speed across all the complex products that we have. Okay, so to take us back, we talked about the journey. We talked about how a complex organization we are spread across 2 countries. We talked about how we build out our data infrastructure and our data environment, unified data platform. We talked about the talent. We talked about the use cases. And finally, as I told marketing, we talked about the chair. Okay, that's me. Thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Luke. And as Jim comes on stage just for some closing remarks, want to let everyone know you are welcome to a happy hour following this. I believe it starts at 5 p.m. In the Industry Solutions Hub in the Expo Hall for the reception following. Over to you, Jim.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Luke. And can I get one more round of applause for all of our customer presenters today? Thank you. So yesterday evening, we kind of kicked things off with a happy hour and had some partner awards. And I want to just mention a couple of partners that won some awards specific to the financial services industry yesterday. So first, a round of applause for our Data Partner Award winner, CoreLogic. And then second, the Financial Services Partner of the Year Industry Award, Ernst & Young, EY. All right. Thanks for hanging in today. Listen, please remember to fill out feedback on the mobile app. That's vitally important to us. It's how we improve. And thank you for attending the Financial Services Industry Forum. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks, everyone.